सेशन में हम डिस्कस करने वाले हैं कंटिन्यूस एंड कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव इवैल्यूएशन CCE। CCE एक ऐसा टॉपिक है जो आप ऑलरेडी अपने स्कूल में कर रहे होंगे, मगर इसके जो टेक्निकलिटीज़ हैं, इसके जो टर्मिनोलॉजीज है, व्हाट डज दिस CCE मीन, द कंटिन्यूस, द कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव एंड द इवैल्यूएशन मीन, is very important. And CCE plays a very crucial role because it is moving away from the summative examination system, from the board examination system or the final examination system. CCE का महत्व क्या है? So we will be discussing in today's session the scholastic, co-scholastic, formative, summative and different types of assessment for of learning. So before I start, let me introduce myself. I'm M. Pavan Kumar, a senior research fellow from Regional Institute of Education, NCERT, Mysuru, and let us start. So what are we going to cover in today's session? We're going to cover what CCE is. Introduced in the year 2010, it's a form of school-based assessment. It has two terms. There is one summative and two formative. We'll discuss about this in detail in today's session, and we're also going to emphasize on and deliberate on the three terms continuous, comprehensive and evaluation, because each word carries a precise testable meaning, and this is what is necessary for us to understand, so that we'll be able to decode these terms and we'll be able to get the crucial marks if the question from these topics are asked. Also, we will be focusing on the two domains that CCE focuses on, that is scholastic and co-scholastic. Curricular subject is on one side and the co-scholastic, that is life skills, attitudes, are on the other. We'll also be discussing about formative and summative assessment forms, right? Formative being assessment of learning, or summative being assessment of learning, and formative being assessment for learning. Then we'll come to different types of assessment, that is assessment of, assessment for, and assessment as learning. What is this assessment as learning, assessment of learning, and assessment for learning? We will be seeing the technicalities, the meaning of what does each of this term when put in front of assessment mean, right? So we'll look at the distinction and also the tools and techniques that are required. Tools and techniques that are required specially to assess the students' values and their attitudes. That is the portfolios and anecdotal records, and also usage of rubrics for assessment of learners. So this is all we are going to cover in the CCE topic. तो चलिए आगे बढ़ते हैं. What is continuous and comprehensive evaluation? और ये continuous and comprehensive evaluation क्या है? CCE is the school-based form of assessment. The CBSE introduced in 2010. So CCE है, CBSE ने 2010 में introduce किया था. And what did it replace? It replaced a system where only board exams were conducted. CCE के पहले बस बोर्ड एग्जाम्स कंडक्ट हुआ करते थे. There used to be term end exams or year end examination. CCE came and it replaced it. Not only just replaced it, there is lot more that happens in CCE. And the best part is most of you are aware of what it happens, but it's very important for you to also know what it is known as. What are the technical terms that are given to each and every aspect that comes under CCE? So it is a school-based assessment. Remember one thing, CCE is technically a school-based assessment run by the school itself. CCE is run by the school itself, and not only run by the school, the assessment type is child-centered and multidimensional. This tool that is used, the CCE that is used for assessment, is child-centered. The assessment is built around the learning of the child, not built for checking, for teacher satisfaction. We have to remember that. And it is also multidimensional. The teachers and not internal examiners are the judges of the process. The teachers who are teaching the concepts, the teacher who are there in the class with the learners throughout the year, throughout the term, they are going to assess the learners how learning has effectively taken place. And it is multidimensional. So learning is not assessed only with respect to their academical subjects. Learning is not assessed only with one particular aspect. Learning is holistic here. It's multidimensional and child-centered. Then 2 terms in a year. CCE came and it introduced 2 terms. So what are the 2 terms? 2 terms are term 1 and term 2. Each term carries one summative assessment, one semester assessment for each term, and 2 formative assessment in every subject. So every term will have 2 formative assessments and 1 summative assessment. Why is this done in such a way? This is done to reduce the stress among learners. Examinations carry tremendous stress on learners, and when at the end of an academic year, if the child has to recall and try to answer everything that has been covered in 1 year, it would be too much and very difficult and eventually stressful for a learner. So it's very important to take this in consideration, and what CCE did is to reduce the stress. They spread the examination across the year. By spreading the examination across the year, it lowers examination fear and anxiety. हम अगर आप रिकॉल करेंगे, जब आप यंग एज में थे, जब आप स्कूल में पढ़ रहे थे, तो आपका एग्जाम जो था साल के एंड में होता था, और इस साल के एंड में जो हमको सिलेबस कवर करना पड़ता था, जितना हमको पढ़ना पड़ता था, द क्वांटिटी वाज टू मच, बहुत ज़्यादा. तो इस स्ट्रेस को कम करने के लिए, इस करिकुलम लोड को कम करने के लिए सीसीई ने क्या कहा कि जो एग्जामिनेशंस होंगे थ्रू आउट द ईयर होंगे, जिसमें टोटल मिला के 4 फॉर्मेटिव असेसमेंट होंगे और 2 समेटिव असेसमेंट होंगे. Okay, and this is also done to reduce dropout. Because of such tremendous stress, students feel that they cannot keep up. Students को बहुत मुश्किल होती है to keep up with what is happening. The amount of content they have to remember to write the examinations. This was also leading to dropouts. To reduce dropouts and make the assessment and the learning more meaningful, this examinations or assessment was spread out throughout the year. Now, one more important thing is it tests all-round growth. So, the CCE tracks intellectual, yes, emotional also, physical, cultural, social development. It does not just test marks. So, please remember, marks are not the only purpose of continuous and comprehensive evaluation. CCE also tracks the intellectual growth, the emotional growth, the physical, cultural, and also the social development of the child. How is it taking place in the school? Because school is a social environment. Then CCE is used to diagnose and give remedy. Continuously develops skills. When we use the word diagnosis, when is a diagnostic test done? A diagnostic test is usually done before the learning process. लर्निंग प्रोसेस के शुरू होने से पहले डायग्नोस्टिक टेस्ट किया जाता है, ताकि टीचर को ये पता चल सके कि बच्चे किस एरिया में लैक करते हैं, किस जगह पे उनको जो है प्रीवियस नॉलेज उतना स्ट्रांग नहीं है. ताकि जब डायग्नोस्टिक टेस्ट के द्वारा टीचर्स को पता चलता है कि दीज आर द एरियाज वेयर स्टूडेंट्स लैक और दे नीड सपोर्ट, दे नीड हेल्प, तो पहले वो हेल्प दिया जाता है, बाद में टॉपिक स्टार्ट किया जाता है. अगर इफ यू आर स्टार्टिंग द टॉपिक विदाउट डायग्नोजिंग द लर्नर्स, then there exists a gap and meaningful learning will not take place. So diagnostic test is that. And remedy is when you have identified the gaps after doing the diagnostic test, you provide the remedy. So continuously develop skills. So when we are doing the continuous and comprehensive evaluation, we are also helping learners to continuously develop skills by identifying the problem and giving remedy to the problem. So identifies learning gaps and triggers remedial measures. Through CCE, we can identify these learning gaps. Through diagnostic tests, we can identify the learning gaps, and also we can provide remedial measures to the learners that are in need. Also, CCE is learner-centered. How is it learner-centered? Because it makes assessment an integral part. Assessment is not something that is like in the end they are doing. Assessment is integral part of the learning process itself. Assessment जो है पढ़ाई के learning के चलते चलते चलता है. So motivating part of teaching. So assessment becomes a motivating part for teaching learning rather than separate verdict. यहाँ पे assessment ये declare करने के लिए नहीं है कि क्लास में कौन फर्स्ट आया है, क्लास में कौन सेकंड आया है, या फिर क्लास में कौन लास्ट आया है. यहाँ पे assessment इसीलिए किया जा रहा है कि पता चले कि कहाँ पे लर्निंग हुई है, किस जगह पे लर्निंग इफेक्टिवली नहीं हुई है, कैसे उस जगह को आइडेंटिफाई किया जाए, उसके लिए क्या रेमेडियल प्रैक्टिसेस या तरीके तैयार किए जाए, एंड हाउ टू हेल्प द लर्नर to Now develop those skills and then together move ahead to the next part. Then what does this each of the words mean in CCE? So most CCE questions hide inside one of these three words. जितने भी CCE के ऊपर क्वेश्चंस पूछे जाते हैं ये इन तीन शब्दों में छुपे रहते हैं. Let us learn the precise meaning of each. पहले देखते हैं कंटिन्यूअस का मतलब क्या है. कंटिन्यूअस का मतलब है कवर्स कंटिन्यूअल एंड पीरियोडिसिटी. कंटिन्यूअल मतलब लर्निंग प्रोसेस थ्रू आउट द लर्निंग प्रोसेस, पूरे लर्निंग प्रोसेस के दौरान. एंड पीरियोडिसिटी मतलब हर इंटरवल पे असेसमेंट किया जा रहा है बच्चे का कि लर्निंग किस लेवल पे चल रही है, कितनी हुई है. ओके. प्लेसमेंट एंड फॉर्मेटिव असेसमेंट डन फॉर्मली थ्रू आउट द ईयर. दे आर डन इनफॉर्मली थ्रू आउट द ईयर. सो फॉर्मेटिव असेसमेंट जो है इनफॉर्मली चलता है और पूरे साल चलता है. ये नहीं कि बच्चे बस एक दिन एग्जाम डेट दिया जाएगा, बच्चे एग्जाम लिखेंगे फिर बाकी चीजें नहीं होंगी. नहीं, CCE in principle, in theory, if you look into CCE, it says that this assessment happens throughout the year, not at a fixed duration. इसीलिए if you see the मार्क्स कार्ड, अगर आप CCE के बच्चे का मार्क्स कार्ड देखेंगे तो उसमें काफी सारा इंफॉर्मेशन होता है, ना कि बस सब्जेक्ट के मार्क्स मेंशन होते हैं. राइट. समेटिव डन पीरियोडिकली एट द एंड ऑफ द यूनिट और टर्म. जो समेटिव एग्जामिनेशन होता है वो एंड ऑफ द टर्म पे होता है, वो पीरियोडिकली होता है. मतलब टर्म के एंड पे एक एग्जाम, फिर सेकेंड टर्म के एंड पे एक और एग्जाम, इस तरह. देन हाउ इज इट कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव? हाउ इज द सेकेंड C comprehensive? What makes it comprehensive? Covers all round development. Comprehensive मतलब it covers all round development, not only the academic development of the child but all round, that is both scholastic, the subject, and co-scholastic, that is life skills, attitudes and values. What kind of life skills are students developing? किस तरह की एटीट्यूडनल डेवलपमेंट हो रहे हैं बच्चों में? एटीट्यूड रिलेटेड टू साइंस, एटीट्यूड रिलेटेड टू वेरियस अदर थिंग्स. राइट. देन व्हाट आर द वैल्यूज दैट स्टूडेंट्स आर गेनिंग through the teaching learning process or throughout the teaching learning process. Right. So these are very critical aspects of a child's growth. इसीलिए CCE कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव है क्योंकि वो दोनों स्कोलास्टिक और को-स्कोलास्टिक एरियाज को जो है कवर करता है. राइट. स्कोलास्टिक में आपके सब्जेक्ट्स आ जाते हैं और को-स्कोलास्टिक में आते हैं लाइफ स्किल्स, एटीट्यूड्स एंड द वैल्यूज. देन कम्स इवैल्यूएशन. इवैल्यूएशन का मतलब है यूजिंग वेराइटी ऑफ टूल्स. प्लीज रिमेंबर दिस, नॉट जस्ट अ टेस्ट एट द एंड ऑफ द ईयर. इवैल्यूएशन का मतलब ये नहीं है कि एक टेस्ट दिया जाएगा साल के अंत में, नहीं. यूजिंग अ वेराइटी ऑफ टूल्स एंड टेक्निक्स. यहाँ पे बहुत सारे टूल्स और टेक्निक्स का उपयोग किया जा रहा है. बोथ टेस्टिंग एंड नॉन टेस्टिंग, स्पैनिंग नॉलेज, अंडरस्टैंडिंग, अप्लाइंग, एनालाइजिंग, इवैल्यूएटिंग एंड क्रिएटिंग. पिछले सेशन में हम डिस्कस कर रहे थे ब्लूम्स टैक्सोनॉमी को, और ब्लूम्स हम यही डिस्कस कर रहे थे कि ज्यादातर जो असेसमेंट होता है, ज्यादातर जो इवैल्यूएशन होता है, इट इज फिक्स्ड एट द रिमेंबर एंड अंडरस्टैंड लेवल ऑफ ब्लूम्स टैक्सोनॉमी. जबकि हमको बहुत ज्यादा जरूरत है कि ये जो टेस्टिंग है, इट मूव्स अबाव, नॉट अवे, इट मूव्स अबाव from remember and understand to apply, analyze, evaluate and create. It is very necessary. So it is necessary for teachers to use a variety of tools and techniques, right, which are both testing and non-testing, which covers the knowledge, understanding, applying, how students apply what they have learned, how are they analyzing when some information is given to them or when some work is given to them, how are they evaluating their own judgments, others judgments, their peer judgments, and how are they able to create something new from what they have learned. इस क्रिएटिंग में अगर मैं एक एग्जांपल दूं तो आप ले सकते हैं हमारे अटल टिंकरिंग लैब्स का एग्जांपल, जहां पे बच्चे जो भी कॉन्सेप्ट सीखते हैं, यूजिंग दोस कॉन्सेप्ट्स दे आर क्रिएटिंग न्यू आइटम्स, दे आर क्रिएटिंग रोबोट्स, दे आर क्रिएटिंग लॉट ऑफ अदर थिंग्स. सो दिस इज CCE, कंटिन्यूअस कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव इवैल्यूएशन. तो आइए एक क्वेश्चन देखते हैं कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव के मीनिंग पर. द टर्म कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव इन कंटिन्यूअस एंड कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव इवैल्यूएशन मीन्स ऑप्शन ए स्कोलास्टिक एंड को-स्कोलास्टिक डेवलपमेंट, ऑप्शन बी बस स्कोलास्टिक डेवलपमेंट, ऑप्शन सी को-स्कोलास्टिक डेवलपमेंट, या ऑप्शन डी एकेडमिक स्किल्स. तो हमने डिस्कस किया था कि सी कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव इंक्लूड्स बोथ स्कोलास्टिक एंड को स्कोलास्टिक. Comprehensive includes both scholastic and co-scholastic. Comprehensive, the whole child. Subject learning plus subject learning is scholastic, and this life skills, attitudes and interests and values are co-scholastic. So when we talk about scholastic, it is the curricular subject specific areas. Okay, and in scholastic we are also testing not only trying to understand what they remember, we are also trying to test how much they remember, how do they understand, how have they understood these topics, are they able to apply what they have learned, then how are they able to analyze the information that is given, then how are they able to do it, right? So this curricular subjects is assessed through two types of examination which we have already discussed. It is the formative and summative examinations. Formative examination happens 2 times during the year and summative at the end. When it comes to co-scholastic, जब हम co-scholastic पे आते हैं तो यहाँ पे हम life skills और co-curricular activities, बहुत सारे co-curricular activities ऐसे होते हैं जो child की development में help करते हैं. अगर हम अब हमारा जो है NEP 2020 का वीडियो रिकॉल करेंगे या फिर हमारा जो नेशनल करिकुलम फ्रेमवर्क फॉर स्कूल एजुकेशन है उसका वीडियो रिकॉल करेंगे तो हम वहाँ पे देख सकते हैं कि कैसे हमारा जो करिकुलम फ्रेमवर्क है और नेशनल पॉलिसी है एम्फसाइज कर रहा है. यहाँ पे कहा जा रहा है कि दे शुड बी असिस्ट, बट आवर नेशनल पॉलिसी इज सेइंग दैट दे आर इक्वल because they all together develop in the overall, help in the overall development of the learner. So it co-scholastic and the real world gap that is there. In practice, scholastic side dominates. This we cannot deny. Even now the scholastic side dominates the co-scholastic. And this is seen at a very high extent and a very serious extent, specifically at the grade 11th and 12th. There are schools, there are types of schools where students are not even given opportunity to do anything other than academics, other than subjects. So we have to now change our mindset. We have to move away from what the older system was following, right? Then co-scholastic is often treated as a formality. And many people believe that this is the weakness of CCE. Whereas there is a purpose why the co-scholastic and co-scholastic are assessed together, because it helps in overall development of the student. What are the objectives and features of CCE? Let us now try to understand कि ये CCE के objectives and features क्या है. CCE's objectives all point in one way, away from memorization and a single high-stake exam. CCE क्या कहता है कि हमें ये जो memorization system है, ये जो साल के अंत पे एक एग्जाम करने वाला जो सिस्टम है, इससे दूर जाना है, इसको छोड़ देना है. Towards diagnosis and growth. हमें अभी क्या करना है, वी हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड द लर्निंग गैप्स दैट आर देयर अमॉन्ग लर्नर्स, जिसके लिए हम डायग्नोस्टिक टेस्ट देते हैं. एंड ऑल्सो गिव रेमेडीज फॉर द लर्नर्स टू ग्रो विदाउट लर्निंग गैप्स. दैट इज व्हाट CCE emphasizes on or talks about in theory. CCE talks about development of all skills, right? Skills that are related to your brain, cognitive, related to your how you do things, the psychomotor and the affective, your emotional domain. So develop all skills together. अपने cognitive, psychomotor and affective skills को together develop करना चाहिए, and this will develop the whole personality, not only the intellect. जब आप बस cognitive level पे focus करोगे, जब आप बस memorization and recalling पे focus करोगे, तो it will only help develop to some extent the cognitive part. Very little extent. But when you are developing all the skills, not only cognitive, also psychomotor is skills that they can do well. It can be music, it can be sports, it can be craft. So these skills are also necessary, and studies have proven that when learners are involved in such skills, it eventually leads to stronger development of brain. Then comes de-emphasizing memory. जो मेमोरी बेस्ड टास्क था, मेमोरी बेस्ड असेसमेंट्स थे और मेमोरी बेस्ड लर्निंग था, उसको डी एम्फसाइज करना है, स्पेशली व्हेन इट कम्स टू असेसमेंट. असेसमेंट शुड नॉट फोकस ऑन मेमोरी बेस्ड टेस्ट. So lay stress on the thought process and deliberately de-emphasizes rote memorization. Our focus should be on how are students thinking. How are they analyzing the information? Are they able to apply what they have learned? This should be of the focus and not what is the definition. They should be able to just memorize the definition and write the answer. No. They should be able to justify. They should be able to discuss. They should be able to deliberate. That is the purpose. Then, integral to teaching. This makes assessment a built-in part of teaching learning process. Right? This makes assessment and evaluation a built-in part of teacher learning process spread across the whole year. Then comes diagnose, then remedy. First, identify the problem that is there, followed by the remedial instruction to fit in achievement. Because when you're able to identify genuine learning gaps that exist among learners, you'll be able to give targeted remedy for those specific areas. You need not give again remedial classes for the entire subject. That will just waste time for you and also of your learner. Targeted remedy of the specific gaps that are identified would benefit the learner. Also, quality control acts as quality control device to maintain desired standard of performance. If you're able to observe that the student is not performing up to the extent, these continuous assessment techniques will help you identify where the gap lies. Which area should you focus on? And for this, you can also collaborate with other teachers and make sure that these gaps are filled and the performance is standardized. The standard of performance is improved. Then it should be learner-centered. Turns teaching and learning into a learner-centered activity. So students are motivated through this assessment. They are not judged. When through assessment something is found where they can improve on, where they are doing mistakes and they can improve on, students should be motivated to improve them. You should not use assessment to say that you don't know this, you don't know that. Yes, that is what you are able to find out. But then the main purpose is, now how will the child, what should the child do to learn it better? That should be the focus. Now let us come to the next question. This question is related to assessment. The main purpose of assessment should be, assessment का main purpose जो मूल कारण है वो क्या है? Is it option A to diagnose and remedy gaps in learning, or option B to point out the errors of learners, option C to measure the achievement of learners, या option D to decide if a student should be promoted? Try to find out, guess करने की कोशिश कीजिए कि assessment का जो मूल कारण है वो क्या है. क्या ये बच्चों को डायग्नाइज करना है और उनके जो भी गैप्स मिलते हैं, लर्निंग गैप्स, उसको आप रेमेडी दे के फिल करना है, या फिर असेसमेंट इसलिए कर रहे हैं ताकि आप बता सके कि इस जगह आपने गलती की है, इस जगह आपको कुछ आता नहीं है, या टू मेजर अचीवमेंट ऑफ लर्नर्स कि हाँ तुम्हें इतना आता है, तुम फर्स्ट रैंक हो, तुम सेकंड रैंक हो, तुम थर्ड रैंक हो, या फिर तुम लास्ट रैंक हो, या ऑप्शन डी टू डिसाइड इफ अ स्टूडेंट शुड बी प्रमोटेड. ये पिछले का एक क्लास से दूसरे क्लास को प्रमोट करने के लिए यूज किया जाता है. व्हाट इज द मेन पर्पस ऑफ असेसमेंट? So, the main purpose of assessment is to diagnose and remedy gaps in learning, which we have been emphasizing. So, diagnose and remedy gaps in learning means assessment exists to improve learning, not to merely measure or rank it. Diagnosis is followed by remedial action, which we have discussed in detail. So, diagnose the students first. What does that mean? Find where learning is broken down. Find where the learning has broken down. कहाँ पे learning में एक gap है, कहाँ पे एक step टूट गया है, फिर बच्चा इसके आगे समझ नहीं पा रहा है, फिर solve नहीं कर पा रहा है. Then the specific gap, not just a low mark. The main purpose is to identify the gap, not just grade the student as you have scored low, you have scored medium, you have scored high. No. After you find the gap, you remediate. What do? Diagnosis of gap must be followed by appropriate remedial measures. Appropriate remedial measures, not drill or blame. Drill का मतलब ये है कि when you find out that in class में few students have done mistakes and they have not scored well, what teachers do in remedials, they again start teaching all the concepts all together. Then the motivation is lost among the learner because they might know some concepts very well and they might be struggling only with specific concepts. So when this remedial happens, when students are to be remediated, then only the specific gaps that are to be filled should be focused on by the teacher. This is what CCE says, and this is what you should remember for the examination. Also, feed learning forward. Very important. The purpose is to improve future learning and teaching strategy. It is not only a learning for the student, it is also a learning for the teacher. When you're teaching a particular concept and you can see that the large number of students are making error at a similar point for a similar concept or at a similar level, then the problem does not lie with the student, but it lies with the teacher. And also, now you are not being judged or graded like the learner. No, this gives you a chance to improve yourself, change your strategy of teaching, and include resources or other things that can make the understanding of that particular gap more meaningful for all the learners. Right? So, for improving future learning and teaching strategy, so assessment for learning, not just of it. So I just mentioned what is for learning and off learning. Let us look into them in detail. So assessment of, for, of, as, and in learning. Let us understand them. The distinction examiners, that is the distinction examiners now reach from most. The preposition changes everything about the purpose. The preposition assessment के आगे जब ये for लगता है, off लगता है, फिर as लगता है, ये जो है assessment का मतलब बदल देता है, which is very important, and this is something that we have to remember. When it comes to assessment for learning, for का मतलब है कि बच्चों ने अभी throughout education purpose क्या सीख रहे हैं. ठीक है? Assessment for learning, तो इसमें आते हैं आपके डायग्नोस्टिक टेस्ट. बच्चों को सीखने के लिए क्या चाहिए? What do the learners need to effectively learn what is going to be taught next? तो उसके लिए क्या करते हैं? Ongoing formative assessment या फिर टेस्ट किया जा सकता है. Teacher made tasks gives feedback that supports the next step of learning. It is diagnostic in spirit. So assessment for learning मतलब लर्निंग के लिए आप असेसमेंट करते हैं ताकि आप आइडेंटिफाई कर पाएं कि क्या क्या गैप्स अभी हैं, जो प्रीवियस नॉलेज है और जो अभी वो पढ़ने वाले हैं उसके बीच में, ताकि यू विल बी एबल टू गिव रेमेडियल इंटरवेंशन फॉर दैट एंड देन यू कैन स्टार्ट द टीचिंग. That is assessment for learning. When we come to assessment of learning मतलब जो भी उन्होंने सीखा है, right? Assessment of whatever they have learned. This is the summative tests or the summative assessment that is done. This is summative in nature, sums up the achievement at point in time. What it does, it sums up achievement at a point in time. So this is what the learner has understood at the end of the entire teaching learning process. For this, what we do, we use standardized tests. We use standardized tests to do summative examination. And what are we doing here? Here, judging what has been learned is tested. So here we are not trying to provide remedy. Rather, in summative examinations, we are trying to judge what has been understood and what has been learned by the learner. So this is assessment of learning. When we come to assessment as learning, it is self and peer assessment. Assessment is a part of learning here. So this assessment as learning is not only done by the teacher. Assessment as learning can also include peer assessment, where students critique upon other students' viewpoints or how they have written, or students debate, students argue in the class. Argue means scientific argumentation, not argue means the other thing. So students generate quality information about their own understanding and others' understanding. So this is assessment as learning. So assessment in learning just sums up all the above three that are there. Assessment in learning just sums up. It provides a fertile question at the center, and it generates feedback for new lines of learning. So even at the end of the summative or when the formative is done, overall, assessment is an integral part of learning. And when assessment in learning is happening, it includes all the three: assessment for, assessment as, and assessment of learning. Let us look at a question now. Try to identify the type of assessment that has been asked in the question. Question में किस type का assessment दिया गया है, उसको पहचानने की कोशिश कीजिए. Christina took her class on a field trip. Christina took her class on a field trip and on returning discussed the trip with her students. This may be connoted as, assessment for learning, assessment of learning, learning for assessment, learning of assessment. पहले हम क्वेश्चन को देखते हैं and let us try to understand what the question is trying to ask about. Christina, what did Christina do? She took her class on a field trip. क्रिस्टीना जो है अपने बच्चों को एक फील्ड ट्रिप के लिए लेके गई, अपने स्टूडेंट्स को, क्लास स्टूडेंट्स को एक फील्ड ट्रिप के लिए लेके गई, एंड वापस आते समय में भी ये बस में हो सकता है, तो क्रिस्टीना ने डिस्कस किया है कि ट्रिप में क्या क्या हमने समझा, डिस्कशन हुआ कि ट्रिप में क्या क्या हुआ है. तो दिस may be understood as what type of assessment? This is assessment for learning, assessment of learning, learning for assessment, या learning of assessment. So the correct answer here is it is assessment for learning. चलिए समझते हैं how is it assessment for learning. It is assessment for learning because a reflective discussion that supports the next step of learning is formative in nature. तो यहाँ पे क्या हुआ, यहाँ पे क्या हो रहा है? Children, our teacher is discussing with the children what have we observed, what have we seen. Teacher is not trying to find out what did you learn from this trip. No, because what have they observed in the trip and now what are they discussing. The discussion जो हो रहा है अभी बच्चों के और टीचर के बीच में और बच्चों के बीच में, ये डिस्कशन जो है आगे लर्निंग के लिए एक बेस बनाएगा. So this is assessment for learning. So whenever you see the assessment for means formative during the process of learning. So it informs and supports the next step of learning. Exactly what a post-trip discussion does. So dialogue is, यहाँ पे क्या हो रहा है, अगर आप क्वेश्चन देखेंगे, यहाँ पे हो रहा है डिस्कशन. डिस्कशन मतलब dialogue is happening, not grading. The teacher has not given students a test. टीचर ने बच्चों को हाथ में एक टेस्ट पेपर पकड़ा के ये नहीं बोला है कि आप अभी भरो इसको और मुझे दो, मैं देखती हूँ आप कितना समझे हो. नहीं, यहाँ पे हो रहा है डिस्कशन. नो मार्क्स आर अवॉर्डेड इन दिस क्वेश्चन. इफ विल सी केयरफुली, नो मार्क्स आर अवॉर्डेड. द वैल्यू इज इन द रिफ्लेक्टिव कन्वर्सेशन. स्टूडेंट्स आर रिफ्लेक्टिव बैक ऑन व्हाट हैव दे सीन ऑन द ट्रिप, व्हाट हैव दे ऑब्जर्व्ड ऑन दिस फील्ड ट्रिप. दे आर रिफ्लेक्टिंग बैक, एंड दिस इज द हॉलमार्क ऑफ असेसमेंट फॉर लर्निंग. प्लीज रिमेंबर दिस. So standardized off. When we say off, she had set a standardized test to rank them. अगर क्रिस्टीना एक standardized test लेके आती, and if she would have given a standardized test where students are filling it and then returning it back, then it would have become assessment of learning. Okay, that would be assessment of learning instead. But this is not assessment of learning. This is assessment for learning. So when we move ahead and when we compare formative versus summative assessment, please go through this carefully. Formative is ongoing and during the course of instruction, whereas summative is at the end of a unit, term or year. Formative test is diagnostic and remedial in purpose, that is identifying the learning gaps and also giving remedial instructions, remedial support to fill those gaps. Summative sums up and certifies achievement. There is no scope for the identification of problem and giving remedial support. No. Then descriptive feedback the child can act on is given in formative, whereas in summative often a grade or a mark is given to the child. Low stakes are there. It is not heavy, content heavy. There is not a lot to be written by the learner, and small pockets में assessment किया जा सकता है formative में. Non-threatening and supportive in nature formative assessment. But when we look, there are high stakes because there is lot of stress. A lot has to be remembered and then written in the examination. The traditional pen paper test usually happens when we talk about summative test or summative assessment. So the tools that are used in assessment here are observation, quiz, project and assignments, whereas in summative it is test and final examination. This was the major difference between formative learning, which is for learning, and summative, which is of learning. Moving ahead, let us look into this question. The most effective tool to assess the values and attitudes of learners is option A, anecdotal record, option B, portfolio, option C, unit test, yeah, option D, summative test. Values and attitudes cannot be marked on a test. Please remember that. Then which tool captures is the best? I've given you a hint. So option C and D are removed here. Is it option A or option B? You all might have heard about portfolios and most of you might know what an anecdotal record is. And the correct answer here is an anecdotal record. So the correct answer is anecdotal record. Now what does this anecdotal record does? It records values and attitudes. It records how behavior changes over time. So values and attitudes show in behavior over time. Values and attitudes cannot be understood by writing, but they are more expressed or expressive in nature. And values and attitudes can usually be observed. So an anecdotal record records or an anecdotal record captures those significant moments. So teacher has this anecdotal records where they document all these things. So anecdotal record notes the significant behavior that reveal attitudes, values, personality across varied situations. So in the anecdotal records, the teacher is trying to note down, take a note or make a note of the significant behavioral changes that will reveal the learner's attitude regarding a perspective thing, regarding a particular thing, what values do they have when they follow, and how these values and personality varies across different situations. Their attitudes, values and their personality varies when they are in different situations, when they are solving different types of problems. When we come to portfolio, the other one that was given, portfolio is a cumulative collection of work showing growth, self-reflection and achievement over time. So a portfolio is usually a thick book in which all the information of the learners is mentioned. Right? Again, if you look in general sense, portfolios can be divided into two major parts. Portfolios can be process portfolio and product portfolio. Process portfolio and product portfolio. What is this process portfolio? In the process portfolio, everything of the learner is recorded. The learning process, how are they performing throughout the learning process is recorded. Their highs, how are they performing good, in which task are they struggling, everything is recorded in the process portfolio, whereas in product only their achievements are recorded. Okay, so portfolio is a cumulative collection. It's a complete collection of work showing their growth, their reflection and achievement over the period of time. What is rubric and rating scale? You all are aware because you all prepare that for assessment and evaluation. It's a genuine assessment technique. A short-term test is not an informative tool. It sums up rather than supports. And rubrics and rating scales help teachers to effectively grade students based on specific desirable traits or answers. You might have prepared a rubric for a test, but rubrics can also be prepared for classroom observation. Rubrics can also be prepared for students' debate activities. It's just about how you grade them and what particular aspects are you trying to measure for a particular task or assess that you are going to assess. So if we'll do a quick recall with respect to the previous year questions, CCE stands for Continuous and Comprehensive Evaluation. Please remember it's Continuous Comprehensive Evaluation. It was introduced by CBSE in the year 2010. Comprehensive covers both scholastic and co-scholastic. And the main purpose of assessment is to diagnose and remedy the gaps. Diagnose and identify, then remedy those gaps. Field trip discussion is assessment for learning. Field trip, the discussion that happens post field trip, is assessment for learning, not assessment of learning. So, tool for value and attitude, a tool you can use to check their values and attitudes, is anecdotal record. Then, the growth over a time can be documented and studied through student portfolios. Remember, not a formative tool, it's a term test when it become to summative. Okay? When we come to summative, it's not a formative tool, it's a term test. With this, the topic of CCA comes to an end. I hope you have got a very clear understanding of what CCA means, what are the three specific terms talk about, and all the various concepts that we have covered in today's session. Thank you so much.